Picture the Roman Empire at its absolute zenith. The year is 165 AD. The city of Rome is a gleaming metropolis of 1 million souls, the undisputed center of the world, ruled by the philosopher, Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Its legions are victorious, its borders are secure, and its power seems eternal. But an enemy is coming to Rome that no wall can stop and no army can defeat. It arrives, not with swords, but with a cough. Not with siege engines, but with a fever. This is the story of the Antonine Plague, a terrifying pandemic that brought the world's greatest empire to its knees. For the common Roman citizen, daily life dissolved into a desperate routine of survival. The bustling streets grew silent, replaced by the haunting rumble of the death cart. What did you do when your neighbor became a source of terror? What secret remedies did people try? And what was the daily routine of a person whose only goal was to avoid becoming the next body on the cart? Subscribe now to uncover the harrowing story of how ordinary Romans survived the deadliest plague in their history. The common myth of a plague is that it is a purely medical event, a tragedy measured in symptoms and death tolls. The truth of the Antonine Plague is that it was a social and psychological catastrophe that ripped apart the very fabric of Roman society. Rome was built on order, on a rigid social structure, and on a deep-seated belief in pietas, a sense of duty to the gods, the state, and the family. The plague shattered all of it. It was an invisible invader that respected no class and no rank. The daily routine of a citizen was no longer about contributing to the glory of Rome. It became a paranoid, desperate struggle for personal survival. The core Roman identity, one of public life and communal duty, was turned on its head as people locked their doors, abandoned their loved ones, and saw every fellow citizen, not as a brother, but as a potential source of a horrifying death. To understand the plague's devastation, we must understand the world it entered. The Roman Empire, in the mid-2nd century, was a marvel of connectivity. A vast network of paved roads and established sea lanes connected millions of people, from the misty forests of Britain to the sun-scorched deserts of Syria. This network was the source of Rome's strength, allowing legions, goods, and ideas to move with unprecedented speed. But it was also its greatest vulnerability. In 165 AD, Roman legions returning from a victorious campaign against the Parthian Empire in the east brought home more than just plunder. They carried an unseen passenger, a disease modern historians believe was a virulent strain of smallpox or measles. It spread like wildfire. A soldier could catch it in Mesopotamia, pass it to a merchant in Antioch, who would then board a ship to Ostia, the port of Rome. Within weeks, the disease was in the heart of the empire, and from there, it traveled along every road and every river, reaching the furthest provinces. The empire's greatest achievement, its unity, had become the instrument of its own near destruction. Let's follow the new, terrifying daily routine of a citizen named Marcus, a craftsman living in a crowded Roman tenement. His day no longer begins with the familiar sounds of the city waking up, but with a dreadful silence, punctuated by the distant sound of wailing. The first thing he does is check on his family, a hand to each forehead, a prayer that no one is feverish. The morning is not for work, but for a desperate search for supplies. The markets are nearly empty. Farmers, terrified of the city, no longer bring their produce. The price of bread has skyrocketed. Marcus's trip to the public fountain for water is a journey of fear, pulling his cloak over his face and avoiding the gaze of anyone who coughs. The afternoon is spent indoors. In a single, stuffy room, the door and windows barred shut. The great public spaces that defined Roman life, the forums, the basilicas, the colossal public baths are now ghost towns, places of contagion and death. A frantic knock comes at the door. It is his neighbor, his face pale with fever, begging for a sip of water. Marcus is faced with an impossible choice, the core dilemma of the plague. Does he uphold his duty to his neighbor and risk the lives of his wife and children? Or does he turn his back and live with the shame? As night falls, the true horror begins. The silence is broken by the slow, ominous rumble of the death carts, manned by the libidinari, the Roman undertakers. He and his family huddle in the darkness, listening as the cart stops at a nearby building. The grim thud of bodies being loaded, and then the rumble as it moves on. All they can do is pray that it passes their door tonight. In a city where the gods seem to have abandoned them, what do you think was the most powerful force for survival? Family, fear, or a desperate last-ditch hope? Let us know in the comments below. Our knowledge of this horrific period is not speculation. It comes from the direct, shell-shocked accounts of those who lived through it. The most famous witness was Galen, the most celebrated physician in the empire. He was in Rome when the plague struck and left a detailed, unflinching account of its symptoms. A raging fever, a hacking cough, a blistering skin rash that turned black and pestilent, and a foul-smelling diarrhea. He documented the disease's terrifying progression with the cold eye of a scientist. Even as he himself fled the city for a time to escape its wrath, we have the words of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself, who, in his famous Meditations, wrote about the fragility of life and the need for courage in the face of death. His philosophy profoundly shaped by the pandemic raging around him, and we have the grim, silent testimony of archaeology. Mass graves from this period have been found across the empire, their disordered contents a stark testament to a society so overwhelmed by death that it abandoned its traditional, respectful burial rites. The plague didn't just kill bodies, it attacked the Roman soul. The traditional gods, who were supposed to protect the state, seemed powerless. Citizens made desperate sacrifices, but the pestilence continued unabated. This crisis of faith had a profound impact. Many Romans, disillusioned with their old gods, turned to new, more personal mystery cults that promised salvation and an afterlife. It was during this period of terror and despair that the Christian faith saw a dramatic rise. While many pagan Romans would abandon their sick family members to avoid contagion, the early Christian communities gained immense respect by following the teachings of their faith, caring for their sick and dying brothers and sisters, even at great risk to themselves. This stark difference in behavior, this demonstration of courage and compassion in the face of death, was one of the most powerful conversion tools the early church ever had. In the end, the Antonine Plague was more than just a catastrophe. It was a critical turning point in the history of the Roman Empire. Lasting for 15 years, it may have killed up to a quarter of the population, including the Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself. It decimated the legions, leaving the frontiers vulnerable. It crippled the economy, disrupting trade and agriculture for a generation. The golden age of the Pax Romana was over, replaced by a new era of anxiety, instability, and religious fervor. The daily routine of survival that the Roman citizen was forced to adopt during those terrifying years was a microcosm of the empire's new reality, a world where the old certainties were gone, and survival was no longer guaranteed. It is a haunting reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile, and that an invisible enemy can be more devastating than any barbarian army. What do you think? Was the Antonine Plague the true beginning of the end for the Roman Empire? Let us know in the comments. If you're fascinated by the dramatic turning points of the ancient world, subscribe and hit the notification bell, and click here to watch our next video. The Secret Life of a Vestal Virgin. What really happened inside the Temple of Vesta?